And here we are. We are live on Tuesday training. Welcome, practitioners. I'm so glad that you guys are all here. We're live on YouTube. I'm going to open up the chat right now so I can see you guys. Gary and Eileen are here in the club seats. We've already had a little powwow before we went live. So everybody is here and accounted for, which is fantastic. Gary, yes, I did. I sent you an email back, but I didn't hear back from you. So maybe you didn't get the response, but you want to check that. We could
Okay,
talk
thank
about
you.
that after training today. Yeah, for sure.
Okay,
All right,
good. Thank
guys,
you.
we are diving in today for some anatomy, and I'm just about to get our chat open here. I am your host for the hour. For those of you who are here for the first time, I know there's so many of you joining us. Welcome. We love having you in our community. The community is all about practitioners coming together and really working diligently to become the best in their industry so that we can serve all the people that we serve with high level bodywork. I'm here every Tuesday as your fearless host to share with you the anatomy that I know is needed to do that. I don't teach methodology or techniques here on Tuesdays, but we do talk about the anatomy that's needed for those techniques and those modalities. And the modality that I do share in training is the Schatz method, which is what I developed clinically. And I know a lot of trainings out there say and make the same claims, but what we work through is strategic thinking through the body and how it shows up, how it compensates, how it recruits. And in order to do all of that, we need to have the anatomy to do that. So that's what we're here for on Tuesdays. Um, and oh, we have 222 videos right now on our channel. Isn't that cute? That's an angel number that means we're loved. Yes, we are. We love you back. And so thank you all for being here. We super, super love it. All right, I'm having just a moment getting our chat open up on Zoom, excuse me, on YouTube, but I know I'll be able to see you guys soon. So please do, here it is. Please do let me know that you're here. I know, oh yeah, there's several of you here watching live. Great, love having you. Give me a wave or a high five or something to let me know that you're here. You know, I love to acknowledge you guys by name. And we're going to work through some anatomy today. Now, this is a really interesting period of time in our Shots Method community because this is the start of our new year, basically. So July 1st is when we start our new mastery track for the year. We had a little bit of a pause, I'd say, because of our US holiday last week. So we're officially starting our first full week here this week, but it is still the beginning of July. And when we start in July, we start with the beginning because why would you start otherwise than anywhere else than the beginning? You want to start at the beginning so that you can get to the end. And the beginning for us is laying down the tracks of the shots method and the touchstones that make up that method. And most importantly, the anatomy that goes with that. So you guys might have heard me say this before. When I first endeavored to and did train on my method, it was just about the method, the three touchstones, the assists that go with it, the measurements, the thinking through it, and let's get it done. And I made a huge mistake. And the mistake was assuming that all of the practitioners who came, whether they were manual practitioners or movement practitioners, because both can use the method, the assumption that I made was all of those practitioners had the same anatomy that I had and also had the same understanding of that anatomy so that they were able to use that anatomy in the methodology to then create the solutions that the method can create and does create, and it's beautiful. And so that was a good learning curve for me. I think that those of us who do teach, whether we're teaching our clients or teaching someone else, we also get to be the student at the same time. If you're being a teacher and you're not being a student, you're missing it. And if you're being a student and you're forgetting that you got to be a student and that you get to learn, then you're missing it. So we all get to learn at the same time. And what I learned was, okay, so I really rely on this amount of anatomy and the understanding that I have of that anatomy, some of which I, unveiled for myself clinically. I want to also share that with the practitioners so that A, they can do the method, and even if they aren't interested in my method, they can do what they're doing a bit better. So we start with that. And we talked last week here in Tuesday training about what foundational anatomy means. And not many of you, but a couple of you, hey, Cheryl, joining through YouTube. All right, cool. I don't know why you have a crown and a number one next to your name, Cheryl, but I think that is worthy and earned. How did you get a crown? I don't know how YouTube crowned you, but I think that's fantastic. They definitely called your number. Way to go. Yay, you. Okay. We all should have crowns next to our name. We're all royalty. Okay, but I digress. Not really, because We are royalty. But that brings me back to we want to learn our anatomy and not be freaked out by the word foundational. Now I caught up with what I said. Not many of you unsubscribed after last week, which is good because that means that you're, humble enough and also aware enough to know that, like, hey, I could do like a minute of a review and it won't, it's not going to kill me. And it won't. But I want to talk to you about this place that I start us in anatomy. Yes, I'm glad you accepted, Cheryl. Exactly. I want to talk to you about this place that I start with anatomy, not only in our mastery track, but also for the rest of us who are not in the Schatz method track, but are still looking at, okay, I'm here in my career and I'm solving big problems and aiming to still solve big problems. And there's just a couple things I don't understand. And Gary, you know this because we've talked for years and years. Like, I have a client with X, what do I do? And the question always comes back to a bit of anatomy that's needed to be able to answer that question fully. So, what we do with this particular course is I lay it all out there. And I've said this in a few different places. So, if you've been in this audience, you've heard it before. That is that this course that we start July with in our mastery training schedule, this course that we start with, Inspired Beyond Anatomy, if I only had 20 hours to talk to manual and movement practitioners, this would be the anatomy content that I would want them to have. This would be it. If I only had 20 hours. And in fact, I did teach this course, this exact course content, for 13 years live and in person for only 20 hours. I only had a weekend to teach it. And so I talk fast and be efficient and get it all in there. So, why do I want this anatomy to be your anatomy? Is it the answer to everything in the world? No. Does it cover everything in depth? No. Does it teach you how to implement? Not really. So then why do I want it? Because it covers the breadth of what we're supposed to know. And I don't like to shit on us, but kind of am in this moment. So bear with me. It covers the breadth of what we should know from the training we already have, right? So if you went to massage therapy school, you should know this kind of anatomy. If you went to yoga teacher training, Pilates certification, personal training, this is the anatomy that I think we all were supposed to have so that we knew like how wide the topic was. And then we take ourselves after graduation from that initial foundational place and then we move into, okay, now I got to go deeper, right? So you get the graduate, like your bachelor's degree, your license, your certification in hand, and you're like, okay, this is what I'm responsible for, all of this in the body, and now I got to be responsible to it. All right, and then you move on to your master's level of bodywork. So this isn't the master's level, but it's also not the kindergarten level. And what I find in this particular 20-hour outline of anatomy is that there's lots of places where practitioners are like, "Oh yeah, I didn't learn it that way," or "I didn't learn that," or the only 20 hours that I had. This is classic for yoga teachers because yoga teachers have exactly 20 hours of anatomy carved into their A&P portion of their training. How do I know that? Because I taught it for 13 years. That's what I'm sharing with you guys. And in those 20 hours, it's up to the educator to decide what anatomy they're going to put in those 20 hours. And more often than not, a yoga teacher will come back to me and say, well, all that we learned in that anatomy time was muscles. Cool. I'm so glad you got 20 hours of muscles. But I'll tell you what, those of us who are massage therapists know that there's 46 hours of muscles 4 times. And that's how much muscles we're supposed to know. So, does that mean that a yoga teacher is left with enough muscle knowledge at the end of 20 hours? No, it's like a quarter of what they should know. And what about the rest of the anatomy? Same thing goes for massage therapists who had way more hours of muscles in their anatomy portion or their muscle anatomy in their track of that, initial license and certification. What about yoking it to the rest of the body? What about the Eastern anatomy that goes with it? In the first state where I was licensed, we didn't have any Eastern anatomy. It's not part of the medical world in that particular state. In the third state where I was licensed, it's a huge part of that curriculum because it is recognized in the license in that state. So, what makes up the difference? What makes up the difference is how much breadth do you have to actually serve the body that's in front of you. It's not about a mandated curriculum. It's like how much breadth do you actually understand the holism of this body and the yoking that goes with it? Yoking like yoked together. Guys, every part of our anatomy is all underneath our skin, encompassed as a whole system. So when we start studying and we only focus on one thing, like only the muscles, we're missing it. We're missing that the nervous system tells the muscles to do the movement and that they have to leverage themselves on bones, which requires soft tissue in the joints to get the movement to happen. Hello, it's yoked. And when we're only focused on the Western medicine, Western anatomy, and not focused on the Eastern anatomy, we're missing the part that's non-tangible, that's so real. And how do you know it's real? Because when you walk into a room and two people that are in the room before you have been arguing, even if they're not saying a word, you can tell because there's a non-tangible part of you that's very real. And that all affects your physical, tangible parts, right? How many of us have heard like the amount of stress that you carry in your body starts to do its due diligence on your organ systems and how you fire hormones? And how many of us know that our hormones are connected to our nervous system and the hypothalamus in the brain? Why are we treating stress and not hormones, or vice versa? Why are we treating hormones and not the stress and the daily lifestyle that comes with it? Why? Because we're teaching ourselves to look at the body in silos instead of in holism. And all that and more is why I put this curriculum in this particular course. And I could go on about it. So, again, if there was only 20 hours that I had with you in our career path, this would be the anatomy that I'd want you to have because it would show you the breadth of what's there. And then you get to go later and dive deeper into each one and then connect the dots for yourself so that you are treating the person that you're treating holistically. And I don't mean holistically. I know, Eileen, this is a word that like got watered down in your land, and I get it. You know how many words are watered down right now? Holistic is watered down. Natural remedies is watered down. Functional anatomy is watered down. It's all freaking watered down, guys. So guess what? This magical vessel has never become watered down. This magical vessel has never become superfluous or yesterday's news. This remains a majesty, mine and yours, which means we get to figure out how to not be bored about the terms and just get back to the work that we're supposed to do, which is learn how magnificent it is so that we can be in service to it in the right way. And also stop looking for shortcuts. It's not going to happen, guys. You're not going to learn everything you need to know in an hour free training on YouTube or in a weekend workshop. It's just not how it goes, guys. It's just not how it goes. Remember, I said at the beginning that the teacher, the educator also gets to be the student? As I was putting this coursework together, I learned again. I learned again, like, okay, wait, how much do I actually know? And I'd write it all out. I'm like, oh, wow. Okay, well, how am I going to squeeze that into 20 hours? So I was also learning as I was putting together content I already knew, I was also learning like, how does this land for the person on the receiving end of it? How am I communicating that? And that doesn't mean that you have to become an anatomy teacher. It might just mean that's how you become a better practitioner. How is it landing the stuff that you say to your clients? Are you talking shop with them like the way you should be maybe talking to us instead? Or are you actually explaining it in a way that is a benefits conversation that involves them in the conversation without blowing their mind and over delivering? I used to do that too. I used to be so impassioned and so emphatic, and I'd be like, but, you have to, but. And the clients are like, okay, I'm a CPA. Like, I don't know what you're talking about. Can we just get back to my back pain? And I'm like, oh yeah, okay, yeah, that didn't really land. So how you communicate what you know is also part of you being a student of who you are as a practitioner. That's part of it, right? And that's like a bigger mindset piece. We don't cover that in Inspired Beyond Anatomy, but I'm just sharing with you that even in what we might think is like basic anatomy, it's not basic or foundational, and I'm beyond that. Okay, ego check. You still get to learn. Like, can you explain everything that's basic to you? Can you communicate the connectivity between it for the client that you're serving and why part A affects part B? Can you actually give them the knowledge about that? Or do you just find yourself saying, well, it's all connected, which is kind of a cop-out answer. It means that you don't actually understand it enough to explain it so that someone else can understand it. And when you start talking about like lifestyle and leadership, if you can't explain to people what matters to you and how it relates to you about anatomy when you're at work, you're probably not explaining to people at home what matters to you and how to explain it to them. Like you're probably not covering that really well. So you get to find a way to, even at the quote basic level, Find your clarity around it so that both of you are in that conversation on all things, not just anatomy, but of course, anatomy, because that's what we're here to do. So, hi, Simon. I'm glad that you're here. Simon, you have a crown too. You have a crown as well. I don't know if you guys can see that in the comment section, but you have a crown and a number two next to it. Cheryl's crown has a number one next to it. This is definitely a new feature in YouTube, which I am not privy to, but I wonder if like you guys are getting crowned as royalty as you make comments. I don't know. I feel kind of tempted to like ask the third commenter to comment to see if you get a number three and also a beautiful crown after your name. It could be. Although Simon, I know you comment all the time, which we love that you're here. I feel like we're live and in the house with you, so that's lovely. Gary, you have a crown here because you're in the club seats, babe. You have a crown right here. You get live and in person. We had a pre-call meeting before we even went live on YouTube. You got your crown. Just imagine, there's probably like a Zoom feature where I could put crowns on you guys. If I was that tech savvy, I would be popping crowns all over the place. But just imagine that I see you already with a golden crown on your head. Like, of course, without question. Okay, we all have crowns. All right, beautiful. So let's dive in then, shall we? I just want to run through the outline of the, not just the outline, but I want to run through the outline of this inspired band anatomy. I want to make sure that you all are aware of what I think is the breadth that we need, and then we can pause in a few places and talk it out. This course right now is the course of the month in the club for those of you who are club members. It's also the course that we start our mastery program with. Those two are separate things, but if you happen to be in mastery, you're also in the club, as you know. The course is available for the whole month of July, so you have a whole month to get through the 20 hours. And remember, we used to do it in a weekend, so it's totally doable. But I don't want you to cram, force feed yourself with it. Although, if you wanted to join the club just on a complimentary pass, you could do that for 7 days and definitely have enough time to get it. I really think that this is a healthy outline of everything that both manual and movement practitioners need to know about the body. The course itself is broken up into, or separated, I should say, not broken, nothing's broken. It's separated into three sections. So we have part one, which is foundation, part two, which is Eastern anatomy, and then we yoke it together with the Western anatomy, and then part three is movements and injury. I'm sharing this at the start here because most practitioners, when you're left to your own devices, you want to jump to part three and be like, oh, just give me the injury part, Gina. I already know the foundational anatomy. I know that you think that that's true. And again, part one lays that all down. So in order for us to get to movement and injury, we've got to know bones, connective tissue, joints, bone ID, and how they all work together. That's the first three chapters, first three lessons of part one. So that's how it works. Sophia, you also have a crown, but you have a number two. I don't know this number system in the live chat in YouTube, but I'm super happy y'all are getting crowned. I'm glad that you're here. Thank you for commenting. We love having you. So, section one, part one of Inspired Beyond Anatomy is 7 lessons. I already mentioned the first couple: bones, joints, bone ID, and all the connective tissue. And in those places, we also talk about the applicable nature of them, right? So, I share with you how joints move. I talk to you about connective tissue. For example, we've talked fascia here on Tuesday training, and how fascia and muscles relate to each other, and the science that we have around fascia, and why, when and why we focus on fascia versus on muscles and vice versa. Again, there is not one body part that is the answer. If it was, guys, we'd have it by now. If it was only fascia that mattered, and I know there's some fascia lovers in the space here. I'm not going to call you out all out by name, Club C people, Eileen and Gary, but I know that there are some fascia lovers in the house, and I am too, and I have shared that with you. I literally went to the first International Fascia Conference because I was that much of a fascia lover, and I still am. The point I'm driving home here is it's not the only structure in the body that we need to know about in order to solve functional injuries and pain. If it was, that's where I would have stopped. So I share that with you in that chapter, in that lesson. I recognize I'm intermingling chapters and lessons, and I don't want to confuse you guys. It's lessons. Simon, we're crowned. I can't see the last word, Simon. Put a yes again. You know how to do that. We're crowned number twos. I think that's what yours says. I don't know why there's a two and a one. I got to find this out. I'm going to ask Monica. She knows everything about YouTube, so I'm going to ask her about that. Okay, then we move on to lesson four, which is the nervous system. Now, for those of you who already joined me this spring when I taught live again, the eight functional principles that I've outlined that we use in our method, and I also have that course available if you're not in the Schatz method. It's really valuable for manual and movement practitioners. We've talked about this for a long time now already this year. It might sound to you like these first four lessons in Inspired Beyond Anatomy are that course again, and they're not. Here's why. One of our Shots Method advanced graduates said it like this. She's like, it's a beast of a course. You say everything we're supposed to hear in this course, but the deep dive is in latter courses. However, she said, going back to review this course got me to realize, oh, it's all of this together. Because once you go down the deep dive, then you got to come back out and then look, yeah, like across the horizon again, right? So the first four lessons, even if you've taken the functional principles course, isn't something that you should bypass because there's other information in it. But you'll hear that the seeds were planted here. And that's the point because we're at the beginning. July is our beginning. We're planting the seeds here, and then we're going to grow rich trees from that. Then we move on to organs and organ systems. And this is really the place where I kind of just land this and we don't bring that up a whole lot more, especially in the shots method. And we haven't talked a whole lot about it here on Tuesday training either, because most of us are on the functional parts. However, when you get into cardiovascular and respiratory, which is lesson five, you start realizing how they are all dependent on each other. Like we're interdependent by design. And I say this here in this lesson that the heart is a magnificent, magnificent organ. The lungs are a mystery to me on how those tissues are even made. And on their own, they are just awe-inspiring. However, and they require each other's connection, their interdependence to do their job to their full extent, which means that is our physiology. We need each other, and there's a wholeness and a connection to everything, which kind of takes us back to what I said at the top of the hour. We don't want to just look at one structure and think that that's where all the answers are. We're not even designed that way. So how could it be? And then we start talking about how muscles move blood and blood requires muscle contraction. So now we're getting into the musculoskeletal components and the organ systems. And we're like, oh, wait a minute, there's a whole thing there going on. Got it. Same thing goes for respiratory and breath and the accessory muscles that make up breath, and how when our nervous system and our accessory muscles are doing something other than their optimal, breath gets impeded, and then what's that impact on the body? We go over all of that. Like we need to know that, guys, right? If you're navigating pain and you've got your hands on someone or you have them moving and they hold their breath, which they do, because that's what we all do, right? Because we're bracing, we're in fight or flight, our sympathetic nervous system is kicked in. We need to know how to navigate that. I think we're past this now. At least, God, I hope so. Although I have seen some videos recently on the internet, which just make my heart cry out for help, on the idea that the no pain, no gain when it comes to manual therapy is just never been true. I feel like it was a marketing campaign and it's just not true. You can do very deep tissue work. You can do adhesion release therapy. You can do corrective neuromuscular interventions and never cause your client pain enough that they have to hold their breath. And if you are a massage therapist or a manual therapist at all, and you are creating contusions, black and blue marks on the person that you're working with the day after you've worked on them, you should quit. And I don't say that lightly because I'm here to literally up-level our industry, but there should be no contusions from the work that you do. And that was the scrapers and all the tools. I don't want to call any of them out specifically by name, but no, guys, absolutely not. Should not be happening. You don't want to damage tissue to heal tissue. That doesn't even sound right. So we need to know about that. And when we remember our anatomy around the cardiovascular system and the respiratory system and how breath and pain and blood all come together and how contusions form and muscles contract, then we're like, oh yeah, now I'm a more sensitive practitioner. Got it. Exactly, because we should be. I remember, just side note, I remember a Rolfing practitioner I used to see all the time. For those of you who love fascia, you'll know that I invested in that on my body over and over and over again. And so for years and years, I would see him, and as soon as I would make a sound, he'd literally put his hands off like this. Now, I don't know if that was only because of what I just shared with you, or if it was also fed by the fact that there was a gender difference between him and me, which then creates some transference, which we also talk about in this course. But both are valid, right? Like as soon as someone makes a sound of discomfort, stop. We're not gonna like keep going like, oh, just hold your breath. No, we're not doing that anymore. That's very outdated. Okay, moving on, lesson six. Isn't this rich already? We're only on lesson five, and there's 14 lessons. Lesson six, we walk through the immune system and the endocrine system. The immune system, interestingly enough, is largely in our gut. So for those of you who have been toying around with gut health, I'm also certified in as a gut health specialist, and I don't teach gut health specifically like for certification purposes in this course, but I do bring that breadth of information into our talk on the immune system. Yes, the immune system first point of contact is the skin and it goes as deep as the small intestine. Do you know that? Do you know that, right? Like we need to know that so when our clients come in and they're like, "Oh, it's allergy season, sniff, sniff, and I just took some medication for that." Hold on a second. Now we have to look at the respiratory system, their immune system, and their small intestine, and now we got to invite their liver into the mix because they just took synthetic medication. Okay, well, how's that going to go for their back pain? Does it even play a part? Yes, it does, actually. Yes, it absolutely does, because it changes how much oxygen they're getting into those muscles. Now we're back to respiratory system. See, the whole thing's just yoked. We can't just look at one. That's one of the reasons why synthetic medication kind of bothers me because, and I know I've talked about my pharmacology training before on Tuesday training, so I don't want to get too gristly about it because it does save lives. But allergies are not going to, like seasonal allergies are not going to be the thing that kills you, but what's causing the seasonal allergy to show up might be a expedited path towards your end your end time on the planet, right? Like it's not going to kill you. However, not having a healthy gut microbiome and then siloing your solution to it by taking one pill to stop a symptom is literally what we know is not okay. Some of you are nodding, and yet we treat the body that way. Oh, there's a symptom. I'm just going to go touch the symptom. No, you're not. You're not going to solve it that way. In the same way that Zyrtec is not going to solve your allergies. When we know more, we do better. And so now we're into immune system and we go down that track as well in this particular course. Then we talk the endocrine system. The endocrine system, aka your hormone system, is involved with every single function in your body. Every single function in your body, from digesting your food to blinking your eyes to moving your hip, the endocrine system is involved. Not responsible for, that's the nervous system, but involved, which means we need to create an understanding about like, well, if it's involved in everything, what's my responsibility for that as a practitioner? Like, you don't want to become an endocrinologist. That's not what we're here to do. However, do you know that the hormones are related to the nervous system in the brain? Does your client know that? Are they getting the support that they need? And do you recognize that hormones and chemicals will be off enough to, let's say, support healthy sleep? Do you know that that's part of the game? Because it is. And when a client isn't sleeping through the night based on their hormone cycles and their circadian rhythms, their physical apparatus, their muscles, tendons, ligaments, connective can't heal. Because there's a hierarchy in the body that the body is smart enough to know. My heart and lungs matters more to my livelihood than my low back ache. So if I'm not getting any sleep, which is a whole system that requires hormone balances, then in order for me to heal my low back pain, I've got to sleep, which doesn't mean that you need to become a sleep specialist if you're a bodywork therapist, but you do get to talk about it and recommend that your client stop thinking that the work that you're doing doesn't work. And in fact, go to the source of the problem. The low back pain perpetuating is because there is no sleep happening. That's the source. If you really want to treat your musculoskeletal pain chief complaints that come through the door, if you really want to treat them and eradicate them, then you get to know what the source is. And in this particular instance, It's sleep. In order to understand that, you got to know the endocrine system. So we talk about that. Then we talk about the organs and where they are and what they do. And when we start putting that whole piece together, folks usually get a little bit quiet. And I remember once teaching this course in person in California, and the room got quiet. And it was interesting teaching in California versus, the eastern part of the country. Because in the Midwest, they're all very talkative. In New York, they're all very like directive. And then on the West Coast, they're all very like, oh wow. Oh wow. And it's a little bit softer and quieter and it's lovely. Gary, maybe you recognize that that's how the West Coast is, which I love. Like I love all I couldn't pick one. But anyway, I remember when we got to organs, they got especially quiet, like more than they were at the beginning. And so I kind of leaned in and I was like, did I like just lose connection with everybody here? Like what just freaking happened? And so I asked, is anybody willing to offer me feedback? What is your experience right now as we're moving through organs? Maybe they needed a lunch break and I missed the memo. And the answer that I heard, I'll never forget. The one gal said, I'm just really struck by how I'm learning to care for the parts that care for me so that I can live this life. And I was like, that is why we freaking learn this kind of anatomy. That is why. That moment of reverence, that moment of pause, that moment of like, wow, this is magnificent. Like I'm a whole thing. And there's parts in me that I didn't have to special order that I just came with, lucky me. And they're doing all this amazing stuff for me. And now I know what they need so that I can care for them while they care for me. Isn't that amazing? So that we stop like complaining about our body and instead become in partnership with it. So that takes us through part one of Inspired Beyond Anatomy. And there's two more parts to go. And now I am going to put you on a little bit of the hot seat. Eileen, have you gotten through? I know you're just starting this course. Have you gotten through any of the lessons yet that we already mentioned? Yes. Do you want to tell us what your experience is? Did I represent them accordingly?
Yeah, I've done a lot of study and it was wonderful to really deep dive or not deep dive to have that breadth, as you mentioned, in all the areas. And yeah, that yoking is so vital. And that's how I see the body. And to have you go through and touch on all these elements was just fantastic. And I agree with what you just said, being able to see about the parts of the body that help us heal and make us be so wonderful is fantastic in seeing those connections. Yeah. I
Oh,
got through part one. I got through Eastern. I'm just starting part three.
ooh, wow, soaring through the course. Okay, beautiful. So, question for you on part one, because you did say, yeah, I've done a lot of study, and I know you have. A lot of us have. I fully acknowledge that. Can you share one thing that you learned in part one that even with all your studies, this time it showed up differently for you?
I think there was a lot of things. I don't think I can pick one. Um, as you pointed out with my mirror neurons being able to pick things up, I think that was very helpful to be able to see and to allow my brain the grace of being able to repeat the things and see the connections a little bit more in depthly.
Mm,
Well, that's a really good question. I'd have to think a minute.
okay. Well, I like that you said, seeing them again and looking at them with a new lens also brings awareness, right? So first off, I love that the course is not completely review and you aren't bored. That lights me up. So just note that, guys. When I say that, Eileen, out of Eileen's experience, she's very well vetted when she came here, and so there's already something more here for you. And then even if it's 100% review, which it rarely is, just given how much we can take in any one training, there's always an extra nugget. There's always a thing that turns the light on that really sends you into exploration in a way that always serves your clients back, right? Then your clients are you see them differently the way you see yourself differently and the way you see the content differently. And as soon as we can have a wider perspective, then there's more that we can cover. So that is also a huge value. I love that for you, Eileen. If you think of anything specifically and you want to come off mute, let us know. What about you, Gary? Have you dove into the course yet? Dived? Jeez, my grammar. Have you started?
I have not been diving yet.
Not been diving yet? Okay.
Yet.
Way to go to
Yeah.
just move that word right over to the side. Okay. All right, perfect. Well, it's there for you. Again, it's in the club for the month of July, so you'll have access to it. Yeah, Eileen, you got it?
Yeah, I think one really big one was the Golgi tendon organs.
Oh, yeah.
That was really, I've heard about the Golgi, the Ruffini, the Puccini, and all of that, but being able to talk about that in detail, and currently I think it might be applying to one of our star soccer players over here. So that was really in the news, and I've been talking about it a lot with my family and my clients this week.
Amazing. Okay, so what did you learn about the Golgi tendon organs this time around that landed differently?
Um, Basically that they specifically, I've heard about Golgi being part of the mechanotransductors, but I haven't heard about the Golgi tendon organ before. So
Okay.
the way you presented it in general was all new to me, and that working that the tendons are responding to the tension and the force.
Mhm.
And when it's damaged, what's happening. And I don't know if you guys watch soccer, but Musiala just broke his fibia and tibia, or his tibia bone, and there was a lot of questions about that. What happened, and what's happening in general when people are ripping things or ripping muscles, and what's going on. So it just became a big conversation in our world over here.
Oh, wow, that's incredible. I'm feeling for him. The tibia is the stoutest bone in the body, so that's not an easy one to break. I did not hear about that news, but I do know that soccer is a big deal in Europe. I don't know that, Eileen, I hear an opportunity for you to, be the voice out there and weigh into the conversation if people are trying to figure out how it happened. Now you have more information. Maybe you can shine a light. That would be, I would love that for you, actually. Yeah, and let's hope that his, not hope, but let's pray that his rehab is easy and that it happens fully because that is no joke. Tibia. Eek. I've only broken, I've only broken two pinky toes. I only have two. I broke them both, and I broke interestingly enough, my ring finger, which felt like hella threatening from the universe, but it wasn't that. It was something else. I've never broken any other major bone except my tailbone, which was a really big deal, but I don't look at that as, I do look at it as a break, but I look at it as more of, it helped me be such a better practitioner to like work my way through that. And I still teach on the learnings that I had from that injury. But that said, even though those were little tiny bones and they all sucked bad, I definitely would choose those over a tibia. And if I had to choose between a femur and a tibia, I think I might choose a femur, honestly. I think tibia is a bum deal. So I have, lots of respect for what he's going through. And yeah, again, I don't know, Eileen, maybe you can weigh in so that his healing can be guaranteed. It's a thought. You never know. Simon says, we're all crowned number twos, maybe for your birthday. Maybe, because it is my birthday month. First, it was going to be a day, then I thought it could just be a week, but I don't know. Why not extend it? Why not extend it? So maybe that is true, Simon. Maybe it was birthday gifts given from my YouTube channel. I love it. Oh, now, Simon, you're number one, though. Isn't that interesting? You're crowned number one. Maybe it's the person who's commenting the most. We'll figure it out. All right, dolls, you guys ready to move through section two so that we can see the value of our breadth of anatomy and what we're supposed to, I hate to shit on each other, but that's it. All right. So section two now in this course moves into Eastern anatomy. And by Eastern anatomy, I mean all the parts that don't have empirical data that you can't do surgery on and actually like put them into a petri dish. But for those of us who study them, we know that they're real. And so, Eastern medicine has outdated Western medicine by hundreds of thousands of years, and that's fine. I remember doing some work with Case Western University on some anatomy, and we were talking about Eastern anatomy because I was asking them, well, what about this? And he's like, empirical data. And I thought, yeah, empirical data, but what about history? What about that data? What about it? So again, as we're moving our way into section two of this course, or just our outline of anatomy, it doesn't have to be this course if you're not interested in the course, but I do want you to have all of this content available to you in your own library bank and your own Rolodex of your brain. Even when you're clear on what's Western, there could be some opportunities where you are talked out of the Eastern. And I'm going to appeal to you not to do that. I'm going to appeal to you not to do that. We've talked about the Venn diagram here on Tuesday training. We talk about it in the Schatz method. We've talked about the elements and the base of what's happening for someone. And still, just like Western anatomy, all of the answers aren't Eastern either, in my belief. Now that I've studied both, I did study and certified in lots of Eastern practices, shiatsu, Reiki, Tai, acupressure. Like I've done all of it, which is that's how I'm vetted to be able to teach on it. And I love it so much. And I also don't think all the answers are there either. Just like I don't think all the answers are in a general massage. Gary, you have a question?
Yeah, I just think when you're looking at Eastern medicine, the key word is energy. And if you don't have a concept of that, and we don't talk about that generally, I mean, in Western, we talk about cellular ATP energy, et
Yeah.
cetera, et cetera. But this is way beyond that.
Mm,
And so the Chinese and whoever was involved way back when got that down, and
mhm.
they found the systems within the body and how this energy moves and then how they could affect it. So, I mean, this
Yeah.
is yeah, I mean, definitely it's a whole, I'm just so glad you've added that because it's a whole part that people in the Western world don't even have a concept of it. We're not brought up with it. I mean, it's just foreign. So
Yeah.
yeah, I appreciate that.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. And I remember using the word energy. Energy was the first word that, in that list of words that we talked about at the top of the hour, energy was the first word that got overused to the point where people just would dismiss it. And I remember once a mechanical engineer saying, "What kind of energy?"
Hmm.
Like you need to be able to describe the type of energy, otherwise I wouldn't be able to address it. And I thought
Mhm.
that was really interesting from a mechanical engineer, like almost Western-minded think tank to say, like, qualify the energy. And it really gave me, first it pissed me off, but then it gave me pause because that's just how I am. And I realized, if I can't explain it, if I can't explain it to someone who's in the conversation with me, then it's also what I shared at the top of the hour. How am I communicating it to my client?
Mhm.
Because they can't see it in an MRI. So
Right.
what did I need to come up with that? And yes, I agree with you, Gary. The word energy is definitely in there. I also add balance and the flow of balance. And I also like to describe it as we are a conduit between heaven and earth, which is not a religious statement. But if you study meridians, you know that there are meridians that run from earth to heaven, and earth to heaven doesn't match my hand gesture, and from heaven to earth. Like there are meridians that run up and there's meridians that run down. And the idea is that they do connect in certain places, which then create the chakras, which are the internal energy centers. And that's just the way that anatomy is rolled out. There's a
Mhm.
yoking between even different energy systems, aka Eastern anatomy. There's a yoking between them as well. And that takes us back to even in the Eastern practices of quote unquote energy, there's a yoking. We're not just siloed. And I'll read your comment in 1 second, Eileen. And that said, even when you're using Eastern anatomy, I do believe that there is a place to be a specialist and to only work meridians, but know that that's not the whole picture. It's just that you've become a specialist in this part of it. Just like I'm a specialist in just the musculoskeletal part of it, but I come to that with all of this other information. You don't have to be a end all be all if that's not what A, you want to do, or B, you don't have enough time for that. Like how there's nobody on the planet that knows everything about the body. Why would we think that we're a generalist and that's also a specialist? It's just not true. So this course is kind of like this is the generalist version of like I know all of these parts, but I'm not specialized enough to do um, needled acupuncture because that's a specialty, right? But I know about the meridians and I know how they're supposed to run, and I know enough about them to think that I maybe should refer you to someone who does just do that. Right now, you're actually a specialist in the holistic nature because you know when to refer out, but you don't have to become the person who does the uh, needled acupuncture. All right, Eileen, let's hear what you said. I think in the words, dis-ease is where, for me, the worlds of Western and Eastern meet. Dis-ease in the body, we call dis-ease in the Western world. But I loved your explanation that Eastern is quality of life and Western is to prevent you from emergency or death. Exactly. That's how those two medical, if you want to call them medical, focuses were originally derived. Eastern medicine doctors, you paid them to keep you well, and as soon as you got sick, you no longer needed to pay them. Western practices, you only play in Western medicine, you pay to play, and you have to be sick to play. And they avert death. They stop you from dying. They don't restore your quality of life. So they just have different, it's a yin yang. It's not a they're the devil and they're evil and they're just capitalists, but it's not about that, guys. It's just that they're designed for different things. And again, as practitioners of the body, when we aren't either really, we're not doing surgery and we're not doing medical interventions, we get to know the whole picture, both sides of the coin, the yin and the yang of it, so that we can decide if this is just an energy imbalance or if this is a sign of something that is really beyond my scope, Western wise, and like immediately you should go see a doctor. And also, no, not to send them to a doctor for a meridian imbalance, because that's not going to happen. Or for allergies, they're going to get medication. That doesn't solve it at the source. Like when we know better, then we can make a better referral. We get to stop blaming our clients for going to a Western medical doctor. It's all they know. So if you want them to stop doing that, teach them better. Now we're back to the start of the hour. Be a better teacher. Teach them what they should know so that they know when is the right time for me to go to a Western doctor and when is the right time for me to lean into an Eastern practitioner and vice versa. Like there's a time and a place for it. There is a time for an emergency room. I've been to one once in my life. I needed it. I didn't want one of me meeting me there. Cool. But most of the time, no. Go ahead, Garrett.
So, you know, I think we're looking at what's the proof of this? What's the proof of with anatomy, you can cut into somebody and look at something.
Hmm.
And in the Eastern world or in the energetic world, we now have certain tests that show what's happening in your chakras, in the energetic fields, just by taking galvanic skin response and
Yeah.
that whole thing. So for those people who are looking for that, there are definitely tests for that.
Yeah, for sure. But
Yeah.
why does that matter to you that there's testing for it?
It doesn't matter to me, but the people are saying, well, show me, don't tell me. Show me. I want to see it. I want
Mm-hmm.
to see the proof of it. So there is that proof out there now.
Yeah. That the proof that I offer is the one that I shared with you guys at the beginning of my share here. If you walk into a room and two people have been arguing, you can tell, right? And it wasn't your
Yeah.
integumentary system that picked up on it,
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
right? Yeah. The other thing that just came to mind for me is that now, since this course was recorded, now I've also trained in the endocannabinoid system. And I did not even know that that was a system for a while. And I feel like that system is the perfect segue between the Eastern anatomy and the Western anatomy in such a rich way. Now that I'm talking out loud, I'll probably do a course on that, on just on just that system alone. And so that's another thing that I share, Gary, with my clients. First, I'll tell them if I'm in a bad mood, can you tell? And then I'll say something about the endocannabinoid system. And there's something about being able to say that system's name, probably because it's a tongue twister, that when you start to describe it, it just puts people into like, wow, I think she knows what she's talking about. Because I've never even heard of that system and I have one. And so it then kind of quells their, um, you know, ruffled feathers about whether you can prove it or not, because it is a Western system, but it shows up with Eastern qualities to it. And so and they can look it up and there's a Wikipedia page on it and the whole bit. So, I mean, I know there is also for chakras, but it's just another entry point. Were you going to add something, Gary?
No, I hadn't even considered the endocannabinoid system as part of the whole thing, and you've just thrown that into the mix. And there's been so much research on that now and so much product out there and a lot of misunderstanding about it
Yeah.
too. Why didn't this work? And I took this and yeah. So I think it would be great for you to do a course on that.
Yeah, I think I might actually.
Yeah,
Thanks for coming to training today, guys, so I can come up with that.
yeah.
And also interestingly, listen to that. Well, I tried a product and it didn't work. You mean you tried a Band-Aid for something that's holistic? Right, because it doesn't work that way. You got to know the
Hmm.
whole system.
Mm.
Hello. Yeah,
Yeah.
isn't that interesting? But yeah, we'll study that one. It is not in this course. I don't want us to be a crowd depleter, but we're going to come back next week and we're going to walk through specifics of section two, and then we'll wrap up with section three. And I think that we'll glean a lot of value from that follow-up conversation, or continued conversation, I should say, next week. Simon's question: do you treat a left shoulder different than a right shoulder, being, quote, the same lesion, because of considerations related to how energy flows? Very interesting question, Simon. Someone dear to me has currently, hey Val, nice to see you. Someone dear to me right now has a shoulder injury, and this did come up in my thought process. So, to answer your question, Simon, the first thing I do is always musculoskeletal, right? Because it's the quickest, easiest. And to Gary's points that have been brought up here, it's also the easiest to describe to someone when they're in physical pain. To describe a physical source and a physical solution is a very easy conversation to navigate if you have all the answers for them. So, and there's so much going on in the shoulder, Simon, that there's lots of places of pause, right? So let's say, for example, it's a rotator cuff injury. Is it the rotation of the rotator cuff, or is it the stabilization of the rotator cuff, which it largely is most of the time? And we've talked about that here on Tuesday training. So I would go there first. However, I would be wondering about other areas of that person's life. So, for example, the left side and the right side of the body hold different things, the shoulders hold different things. And so those would come to mind for me. And while I was working physically, if the physical response was effective, meaning that my treatment was effective and the physical approach that I was having was resolving said injury, then I would just continue on with that track, because when the physical is affected, so is the energy. So I don't have to get into an energy conversation with someone. Not that I'm shy about it. I told you I'm certified in a whole bunch of it. But here's what I do know. If you have your shingle out telling people that you resolve musculoskeletal injuries and that you get people out of pain, which is physical, even though there's an energetic Eastern connection to it, if you hang the shingle out there and your marketing says that that's what you do, and as soon as they come in with a shoulder injury, you start talking energy fluff to them, you falsely advertise to them, and they're not going to believe you because they're in physical pain right now and they don't want to talk about their mother or their ex-wife. It's just not what they want to do right now. They want you to fix their freaking shoulder pain. And I could, that might not be accurate 100% of the time. Maybe you'd get lucky where someone's like, "Oh my God, you see me. Yes, I've been carrying this grief for a long time." But largely, if they come to you for shoulder pain, physical shoulder pain, they want you to resolve the physical shoulder pain. And you have to at least start to do that. And then if you have like a record of being able to resolve things like I do, I know it's 4 sessions. If at the third session we're still looking a whole lot like session number one, I might start bringing in some other ideas, and I would walk them through, not you have issues and start becoming an armchair psychologist. Don't do that, energy workers. It's a turnoff. I'm telling you, it's a turn. I am an energy worker. Don't do it. It's a turnoff. Instead, what you do is explain to them clearly all the physical that you went through that should have elicited this type of response physically. And because it didn't, you're now looking at other sources of their pain. When you present it in that way, they will be amenable to open up to you. Otherwise, you just start sounding like a quack. And I say that as an energy person. I told you I'm certified in a whole bunch of it. Don't lead with that if what you're saying is that you solve pain, physical pain. Do the physical first. And also, that's what this course also provides. the yoking between both. It's not one or the other, it's both. But what is the entry point? And what I find for a lot of energy practitioners, when they find me and they like the work that I'm talking about, is that when they're left alone with their clients and they say that the physical thing is an energy thing, it's a cop out because they don't actually know how to resolve the physical part. And that's why y'all are here. So just be honest about that. With love, I say this to you guys. I'm literally here on my own dollar to be here to support you in this. I'm not getting anything from you. I want this for you. That's the difference. So just be honest about that. And if you really do want to solve the physical and you don't want to turn people off, then learn more about how to solve the physical. I'm sharing with you here that at the foundation, though, I'm planting seeds to let you know I know there's more to it than that. But when you solve the physical, you do solve the energy. So whatever you're advertising is what you should do. And don't try to switch lanes on someone just because you don't know the answer and how to solve it. Learn how to solve it. And that's why we're here together. Okay, my friends, we are now after the top of the hour. Thank you all so much for your contribution today and for adding to such a rich conversation. You're welcome, Simon. I hope that offered you value in that answer. Was this valuable for you guys to do the Eastern Western review? Okay, beautiful. We're going to continue on that journey next week. I can't wait to see you guys. Thank you for the contribution that you added to today's conversation. And until next time, continue to do great work in the world. Bye for now.